You really thought I'd spend my whole life remembering you? The sentence cut through the room like a blade, so sharp and unexpected that even the music seemed to choke into silence. Eyes turned. Someone gasped. And in that suspended moment, every emotion she had ever buried finally rose to the surface. Hello everyone, and welcome to Vale of Hearts, a place where love finds its way through the quietest corners of the soul. Today, we dive into the story of a woman who walked through betrayal, humiliation, and destiny's twisted irony, only to encounter a love so unexpected, it changed the course of her life forever. For 3 years, they had built a life together. They had shared morning coffees, weekend trips, whispered plans, and quiet promises about a future only love-struck people dared dream about. Arya had believed every word, every soft touch, every gentle reassurance. Until the night he sat her down and shattered everything. Arya, he had said, his voice cold, practiced, rehearsed, you're not enough for the future I want. Those words didn't just hurt. They carved a wound so deep she wasn't sure it would ever close. 2 months passed. 2 long, suffocating months of pretending she was fine. Pretending the breakup didn't haunt her every hour of the day. Pretending Lucas wasn't embedded in every quiet corner of her memory. Then it came. A white envelope sitting on her desk at Hale Global Holdings, her workplace, a renowned architecture and real estate firm where she worked as a junior architect. Her name written in gold. His handwriting. Familiar. Sharp. Heartless. Inside was the wedding invitation. Lucas was getting married. And beneath the elegant print was a handwritten note, the kind that twists a knife deeper because it carries someone's real voice. I hope you'll come and see how happy I am, with someone who truly deserves me. She felt her stomach drop. Her throat tighten. Her hands tremble. Deserves him? As if love had ever been a contest. As if she had never been enough. Arya swallowed hard, blinking back tears she refused to shed in an open office. She folded the card quietly, placed it face down on her desk, and forced herself to breathe. She would not break here. But breaking in private, breaking silently, was something she had become painfully skilled at. Every evening, when work ended, she walked to her parents' cafe just a block away. A warm, cozy place with soft lights, wooden shelves, and the faint smell of cinnamon in every corner. It was her refuge. The place where she could hide behind an apron and pretend the world wasn't so heavy. Her parents believed she was simply helping during the busiest hours. They never knew she stayed because she couldn't bear going home to an empty apartment filled with memories she didn't want. One night, after a long day at work and an even longer evening shift at the cafe, Arya found herself fighting exhaustion. Her eyes were heavy. Her thoughts were numb. Her heart was too bruised for anything more. She carried a tray of steaming drinks toward a table near the window. Her hands were steady, she'd grown up helping her parents, after all, but fatigue didn't care about experience. Her foot caught the edge of a chair. The tray tilted. Coffee splashed. Time slowed. And the steaming liquid landed directly on the crisp white dress shirt of the man standing in front of her. A tall figure. Clean, striking lines of a tailored suit. Broad shoulders. Dark hair styled with effortless precision. Steel gray eyes that didn't miss a thing. Adrian Hale. The enigmatic heir to the Hale dynasty. CEO of Hale Innovations Group. A man who carried power the way others carried air, naturally, quietly, and absolutely. And he was a regular. Every morning at precisely 7:40 a.m., he walked into the cafe with the same calm expression, ordered black coffee, nodded politely, and left without lingering. His presence alone seemed to shift the atmosphere, like gravity rearranging itself for him. Arya froze. Her heartbeat thudded painfully in her chest. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she stammered, reaching for napkins. I wasn't watching. I'm exhausted and I really didn't mean to. She expected irritation. Or disappointment. Or the sharp, clipped tone wealthy men sometimes used when things didn't go as planned. Instead, Adrian looked down at his soaked shirt, then back at her trembling hands. He didn't sigh. Didn't frown. Didn't say anything cruel. He simply spoke in a calm, almost gentle voice. Rough day? Arya blinked. The question hit her harder than the spill itself. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. Because he looked at her like he saw more than a clumsy mistake. Like he saw the exhaustion behind her eyes. She tried to laugh, but it came out small and brittle. Something like that. His gaze softened, just barely, but enough to notice. Don't worry about the shirt, he said. It's just fabric. You look like you need a break more than I need a clean collar. Her chest tightened. Why was a stranger being kinder to her than the man she had loved for 3 years? Arya bowed her head. Thank you. Really. Adrian nodded once, almost thoughtfully. You shouldn't try to carry everything alone. Before she could respond, her father called her name from behind the counter. She stepped away to help, the moment cut short, but something lingered in the air. A spark. A shift. A beginning she didn't recognize yet. Adrian stayed for a quiet moment, watching her work with a look she didn't see. Something measured. Something curious. Something that would soon pull their lives into collision. As he left, the small bell above the door chimed softly. Arya didn't realize that the simple accident, the spilled coffee, the quiet exchange, the softness in a stranger's voice, would become the first step in rewriting her entire fate. But destiny likes to start quietly. And that night, Destiny wore a ruined white shirt and spoke with calm, steady eyes. The night the coffee spilled should have ended like any other, with Arya dragging herself home, exhausted and alone. But something about the way Adrian Hale looked at her, steady, calm, almost understanding, lingered in her mind long after he walked out of the cafe. It felt like a small shift in the universe, too soft to be noticed, yet too real to ignore. And it was that shift that brought them face to face again just a few hours later. Adrian returned to the cafe 5 minutes before closing. Arya had just finished wiping the tables when the bell chimed. She turned, surprised to see him leaning casually against the doorframe, no trace of annoyance on his face despite the ruined shirt. "I figured you might still be here," he said. Arya blinked. I thought you'd be busy, changing." A faint smile touched his lips. "I did. But I wasn't done talking to you." Her heart skipped an unsettling beat. "About what?" "About you," Adrian replied simply. "And the kind of day that makes a person drop an entire tray." She froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. No one ever asked her that. No one ever cared enough to. When she didn't answer, Adrian gently gestured toward the street. "Walk with me. Fresh air might help." Something in his tone, quiet, steady, unthreatening, told her she could trust him. Or maybe she was just too tired to argue. Arya followed him out into the cool night. They walked along the empty sidewalk, city lights casting long shadows across the pavement. For a while, neither spoke. Then Adrian broke the silence. "You're hurting," he said, not as a question but as an observation. Arya let out a shaky breath. "Is it that obvious?" "To someone who knows the feeling," he replied. She stopped walking. "You? A billionaire who has everything?" Adrian gave a short, humorless laugh. "Money doesn't shield you from pressure. Or expectations. Or betrayal." The last word pulled her eyes to his. "You've been betrayed too?" He didn't look at her, but his voice grew quieter. "I've been controlled. Manipulated. Told who I should love and who I must marry." Arya felt a chill. "Your family?" He nodded. "The Hale dynasty doesn't just run businesses. They forge alliances. Right now, they want me to marry Isabella Montclair to secure a merger between Hale Global Holdings and Montclair Resorts." Arya knew the Montclair family, old money, powerful, ruthless. "So you have no choice?" she asked softly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "I always have a choice. I just haven't taken it yet." They continued walking, the silence heavier now, bound by shared wounds neither of them intended to reveal that night. Finally, Arya whispered, "Lucas, my ex-fiancé, he's getting married in 2 weeks." Adrian slowed, turning slightly toward her. "You still love him?" "No," she said immediately. "But he wanted to hurt me. And he succeeded." She told him everything, the breakup, the reasons, the cruel note and the wedding invitation. Her voice wavered, cracked, but Adrian never interrupted. He listened like every word mattered. When she finished, he looked at her with something new in his eyes, something sharp, calculating, but not unkind. "Arya," he said slowly, "what if you didn't have to walk into that wedding alone?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "What if," Adrian continued, stepping closer, "you walked in with someone who made him regret ever letting you go?" Her breath caught. "You mean, pretend?" "Pretend," he repeated. "At least at first." Her heart thudded wildly. "Adrian, people would talk." "Your family, talk is harmless," he said calmly. "And my family has talked all my life. They'll survive this too." Arya shook her head. "This is crazy." He leaned in just enough for her to hear the softness in his voice. "Then let's be crazy together." She looked up at him, searching his expression for some sign that he was joking. But Adrian Hale did not joke. "Not about this." "Marry me," he said, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the controlled certainty of someone making a calculated decision that also felt strangely right. "Come to Lucas's wedding as my wife." Aria's pulse roared in her ears. "You can't be serious." "I am," he replied. "I need freedom from my family's plans. You need freedom from his shadow. We can help each other." Her world spun. This was insane. Unbelievable. Impossible. And yet, for the first time since the breakup, she felt something other than pain. Hope. Strength. A spark of dignity she thought she had lost. The quiet street fell into silence as they stared at each other, two strangers tied together by broken hearts and impossible circumstances. Finally, Arya whispered, "Why me?" Adrian answered without hesitation. Because you're the first person in a long time who's honest about her pain. And because you deserve a chance to walk into that room with your head held high. The words hit deeper than she expected. Her voice trembled. If I say yes, there's no turning back. I know, Adrian said. Do you? She closed her eyes for a moment. And in the stillness of the night, with the weight of humiliation pressing against her ribs, something inside her clicked. She was done being the girl who was left behind. Done crying alone. Done feeling small. Arya opened her eyes. Her voice was soft, but steady. Yes, I'll do it. And just like that, fate changed its course. The night Arya agreed to Adrian's impossible proposal, something inside her shifted. Not a small shift this time, no soft, delicate twitch of fate, but a decisive turn, bold and irreversible. She didn't sleep that night. Her mind replayed the moment she said yes, the calm conviction in Adrian's eyes, and the quiet certainty that this one choice would change everything. By morning, she wasn't Aria Collins, the woman abandoned and discarded. She was someone entirely new, someone who refused to be humiliated again. Adrian arrived at her apartment early, dressed in a slate gray suit that should have been illegal at 7 in the morning. He looked at her with that same composed intensity, as if he had been waiting to see whether she'd change her mind. You're sure? He asked. Arya lifted her chin. I am. He nodded once. Then today, we make an unforgettable entrance. Adrian didn't take her to just any boutique. He took her to one of the most exclusive couture houses in the city, no appointment needed, because the Hale name opened doors before anyone had time to breathe. The moment they stepped inside, designers rushed forward. Fabrics shimmered like liquid light. Mannequins wore gowns worth more than Arya's entire apartment. She hesitated. Adrian? I can't afford, you're not paying, he cut in smoothly. Consider it an investment. In what? She asked. He looked at her for a moment. In your dignity. Something tightened in her chest. They guided her to a private fitting room. Dress after dress was brought in, silk, satin, velvet, every shade imaginable. But nothing felt right. Not until the designer pulled out a dress wrapped in protective covering, whispering as if revealing a secret. A custom piece, she said. Never worn. When Arya slipped into it, she froze. The gown was deep, striking red, bold but elegant. The fabric hugged her waist, flowed around her legs like a whisper, and shimmered like she'd been dipped in sunset. She had never seen herself look this way. Powerful. Fearless. Beautiful. She stepped out, and for the first time Adrian forgot to breathe. His eyes traveled from the gentle curve of her shoulders to the dramatic sweep of the gown. And for one fleeting second, the unshakable Adrian Hale looked, stunned. Arya, he said quietly, you look, she held her breath. Unforgettable. Her heart fluttered, dangerously so. But she reminded herself, this was an arrangement. A performance. A necessary illusion. Even if her pulse disagreed. The wedding venue was a massive, glass-domed hall filled with flowers, chandeliers, and the glitter of high society. Exactly the kind of place Lucas Ward had always dreamed of, grand, ostentatious, a stage for his ego. Arya's hand trembled slightly as Adrian escorted her toward the entrance. Whatever happens inside, he murmured, you walk with your head high. Lucas lost the moment he let you go. She didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. The doors opened. And silence followed. Hundreds of faces turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses froze in mid-air. The music faded as if even the orchestra was stunned. Arya stepped forward beside the famously unreachable Adrian Hale, looking like a goddess sculpted from light and fire. And the room collectively inhaled. The whispers began instantly. Is that Adrian Hale? Who's the woman? She's stunning. They look like royalty. But one reaction stood out. Lucas Ward. His jaw dropped. His complexion paled. And for the first time since the breakup, Arya saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Fear. Lucas pushed through the crowd toward them. Arya? What are you doing here? And why are you with him? Adrian stepped slightly in front of her, voice cool as winter steel. She's my wife. The statement dropped like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone choked on champagne. Even the bride looked like she might faint. Lucas sputtered, that's not possible. She wouldn't, she couldn't. Adrian's smile was razor sharp. She could. She did. And she's out of your reach now. Arya wanted to savor the moment, but Lucas wasn't done. You married him just to show up here, he hissed. No, Adrian answered, pulling Arya closer, his hand firm at her waist. She married me because someone like you never deserved her in the first place. The crowd reacted with a mix of awe and scandalized delight. Lucas's face twisted, but he had no power here, not against a Hale. Arya stayed silent, but she held Lucas's gaze until he finally looked away first. and God, that felt good. The ceremony proceeded awkwardly around them. People kept glancing at Arya and Adrian like they were the true stars of the night. Eventually, the music rose again, a slow, elegant melody. Adrian extended his hand toward her. Dance with me. She hesitated. People are watching. They've been watching since the moment you walked in, he said. Might as well give them a reason. She placed her hand in his. His palm was warm. His grip steady. And when he pulled her gently into him, the world softened around the edges. They moved in perfect rhythm, almost as if they'd danced together in another life. Lights shimmered above them, casting gold over his dark hair and silver across her red dress. For a moment, everything else disappeared, the guests, Lucas, the whispers, the wedding. It was just the two of them, breathing in sync, hearts stumbling into a dangerous closeness. Then Adrian leaned in, voice low enough for only her to hear. Tell me, does this still feel like pretending to you? Her breath caught. Because suddenly, terrifyingly, it didn't. Not anymore. For the rest of the wedding night, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between her and Adrian. The dance had been too natural, too effortless, too charged with something neither of them understood yet. And as the music faded and whispers followed them like shadows, Adrian leaned close and murmured, We should go. My family will want answers, sooner rather than later. That was how Arya found herself sitting beside him in the back seat of a sleek black car, the city lights blurring past as they drove toward a place she had only ever seen on magazine covers and news headlines. The Hale dynasty estate. Her heartbeat thudded louder with every mile. The iron gates opened automatically, revealing a sprawling mansion that looked less like a home and more like a modern palace. Marble pillars. Terraced gardens. Windows glowing with warm, golden light. Arya swallowed hard. This is unbelievable. Adrian glanced at her. It's just a house. No, she whispered. It's a statement. His jaw tightened slightly. That's the problem. Everything here is a statement. They walked inside, and instantly, she felt the weight of power in the air. The Hale family didn't need to speak to be intimidating, their presence alone was enough. A tall man in his late 50s stood by the staircase, sharp-eyed and stern. Richard Hale. The kind of authority that didn't need to raise its voice. Beside him was a woman in a deep emerald gown, elegant, poised, her expression carved from marble. Margaret Hale. The atmosphere turned cold the moment they saw Arya. Richard's gaze swept over her, assessing, calculating, unimpressed. So, he said slowly, this is the woman you married without consulting your family. Adrian stepped slightly in front of Arya, protective without being obvious. This is my wife, father. And I don't need permission to make personal decisions. Margaret's lips curled into a polite, icy smile. Personal decisions affect the entire Hale dynasty, darling. Especially when they involve someone of her background. Arya stiffened, but she held her ground. I understand your concern, she said softly. But I assure you, Margaret raised a hand delicately, as if stopping a servant. My dear, understanding requires equal footing. The implication stung like a slap. Adrian's voice hardened. Mother. Richard cut in before the tension escalated. Regardless of opinions, the marriage is done. For now, we will see how this plays out. His words were not acceptance. They were a warning. A servant appeared. The guest room is being prepared for. No, Richard interrupted. They are newlyweds. Prepare the master suite. Arya felt her stomach drop. The master suite. The same bed. The same room. Adrian didn't flinch. That won't be a problem. For him, maybe. For her, absolutely. The master suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Plush carpets. A massive bed that looked like it could swallow a person whole. Arya stared at it like it was a trial she hadn't signed up for. We don't actually have to sleep together, she whispered. Adrian nodded. I know. But if we don't, the staff will report it. And my family, they'll use it against us. Right. She exhaled shakily. So we pretend. He hesitated, then added gently, you take the right side. I'll take the left. I won't cross the middle. I give you my word. Something warm flickered in her chest, trust, fragile but real. She changed into a satin robe and climbed into the bed, staying as far from him as physically possible. Adrian lay down moments later, keeping his promise and maintaining distance. The room was quiet, too quiet. Arya stared at the ceiling, aware of every small sound. His breathing. Her heartbeat. The tension hanging between them like an unspoken question. Finally, she whispered, Do you regret this? Marrying me? Adrian didn't answer. Immediately. No, he said quietly. What I regret is that you think you deserve so little. Her breath hitched. Before she could respond, exhaustion pulled her under, deeper, faster than she expected. Sunlight warmed her face. Soft sheets cocooned her. and there was something heavy, warm, around her waist. Arya's eyes flew open. Adrian's arm. Strong. Protective. Holding her against him. Her back was pressed to his chest, their legs tangled, his breath brushing the curve of her neck. She froze. At the same moment, Adrian stirred. His grip tightened unconsciously before he suddenly pulled back as if burned. Arya, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, it's okay, she said quickly, though her face was burning. We must have moved in our sleep. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. I don't usually do that. I don't usually end up in a billionaire's arms, she muttered before she could stop herself. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Adrian laughed. A real one. Low, warm, genuine. Arya's heart reacted before her mind could stop it. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't pretending. Something dangerous was happening. And it was only getting harder to ignore. Morning in the Hale mansion felt different after waking in Adrian's arms. Arya moved through the halls with a quiet awareness she wished she could shake. Adrian, too, seemed more guarded, not cold, not distant, but as if he were trying to keep something fragile from breaking. Their marriage had begun as a pact. A strategy. A weapon. But now, the lines were blurring. As they walked together toward breakfast, Arya sensed eyes watching them. Curious eyes, not hostile ones. A moment later, a young woman stepped into view at the top of the staircase. Long caramel hair tied in a loose ribbon, bright hazel eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a knowing smirk that felt entirely too sharp. Chloe Hale. Adrian's younger sister. Her gaze flicked from her brother, to Arya, to the small but undeniable space between them. So, Chloe said, descending the stairs with a grace that rivaled the chandelier light, the rumors are true. Adrian exhaled. Chloe. Please don't start. Start, she laughed softly. I'm only observing. She approached Arya, looked her up and down, then whispered conspiratorially, you survived a night in this house. Impressive. Very impressive. Arya blinked. I suppose that's a compliment? Oh, absolutely, Chloe said. If you weren't strong, Mother would have eaten you alive during the night. Chloe leaned a little closer and added quietly, don't worry. I'm on your side. Arya didn't know why, but she believed her. Breakfast was tense. Richard and Margaret barely acknowledged Arya. Adrian barely acknowledged them. Chloe watched everyone with the amusement of someone observing a complex social game. Then a butler rushed into the room and whispered something to Richard Hale. The patriarch's expression darkened instantly. He stood from the table. We have a problem, he announced. The Montclair family has demanded an emergency meeting. Arya froze. She recognized the name. Montclair. The family Adrian had been expected to marry into. Chloe muttered, this should be fun. Adrian straightened. What do they want now? Richard's jaw tightened. They believe your sudden marriage is an insult to the alliance. They want an explanation. Immediately. Margaret added sharply, and they expect your wife present as well. Arya's pulse spiked. Me? Why? Because, Margaret said with a thin smile, you are the reason this crisis exists. Adrian stepped forward. If she goes, I go. And if I go, I lead the meeting. Richard considered this, then nodded slowly. Fine. Let's see how far your marriage takes us. The meeting was held at Hale headquarters, a skyscraper that pierced the clouds above the city. Arya stayed close to Adrian as they entered the top-floor conference hall. Inside waited the Montclairs. Sebastian Montclair, tall, silver-haired, arrogant. Lydia Montclair, elegant but cold, eyes sharp as needles. Executives lined both sides of the table, tension thick in the air. Sebastian didn't waste time. Adrian Hale, he said with disdain, you owe us an explanation. We were finalizing a union between our families, and instead you bring us this. His gaze flicked toward Arya as if she were an inconvenience, not a human being. Adrian stepped protectively in front of her. My personal life is not part of our business dealings. On the contrary, Lydia Montclair replied, your marriage affects everything. Your father promised cooperation on the Silver District development. Our partnership was built on trust. And trust is earned, Arya said quietly. All heads turned toward her. She swallowed her fear and continued. Not given by force. Not bought through an arranged marriage. Your project stands on its own merits. Or it should. Lydia narrowed her eyes. And what makes you think you have the expertise to comment on it? Adrian tried to intervene. But Arya took a step forward. I'm a licensed architect working under Hale Global Holdings, she said clearly. And I've reviewed the Silver District development proposal. The room fell silent. She placed a folder on the conference table. It's structurally ambitious, she said. But dangerously outdated. Your green space allocation is too small. Your cost projections ignore rising material inflation. And your community infrastructure is practically non-existent. Sebastian scoffed. The design was approved by top industry experts. Arya met his eyes. Then the experts forgot the people who will live there. Murmurs filled the room. Richard Hale, seated silently until now, leaned forward with interest. Adrian's eyes never left her. Arya continued, opening her redesigned proposal. If you increase the green corridors by 15% and reallocate commercial zones to the West End, you'll reduce congestion and improve foot traffic. The revised plan also cuts long-term maintenance costs by nearly 8%. And if you integrate community centers and family housing, the district becomes sustainable, not just profitable. The Montclairs looked stunned. Sebastian finally said, this would delay the entire project. It would, Arya agreed. But it would also save millions over time. And give the city something worth being proud of. Silence stretched. Then Margaret Hale, who had been glaring at Arya for days, leaned back with a thoughtful expression. It's bold, she admitted reluctantly. Richard nodded. And smart. Their approval shocked even Adrian. Sebastian Montclair cleared his throat. We will review the modifications. Which, in Montclair language, meant, she made sense, and we know it. Adrian stepped beside her, pride unmistakable in his gaze. My wife speaks with clarity and substance, he said. This partnership will stand only if we respect the intelligence in the room, including hers. Arya's cheeks warmed. Not from embarrassment. But from the way he said my wife as if it meant something more. When the Montclairs left, Richard approached Arya. I underestimated you, he said gruffly. It appears you have more value than appearances suggest. Margaret added, her voice still cool but less biting, you handled yourself well. Chloe grinned from behind them. Told you I liked her. But the reaction that mattered most came from Adrian. When they were finally alone in the elevator, he turned to her, eyes soft with admiration. Arya, he said quietly, I knew you were talented. But today, you were extraordinary. She met his gaze. I just told the truth. And you changed everything. The elevator doors closed. The space between them felt electric. Their alliance had begun as strategy. Now it was something deeper, something neither of them could deny anymore. The ride back to the penthouse after the Montclair meeting felt different. Not lighter. Not easier. Just, changed. Arya sat beside Adrian in the back seat of the black SUV, the city lights sliding over them like moving brushstrokes. Part of her still felt the adrenaline from earlier, the unexpected applause, the way she had stood her ground, the silent pride in Adrian's eyes. But what she kept replaying wasn't the meeting. It was the way he looked at her afterward. Like he was seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her. Adrian didn't speak during most of the drive. He only glanced at her now and then, soft, thoughtful, as if he was afraid that if he blinked, this new version of her would disappear. When they reached the penthouse, he finally broke the silence. Arya, thank you. Today would have fallen apart without you. She smiled faintly, trying to hide her nerves. Someone had to make sure you didn't go to war with an entire dynasty. He let out a soft laugh, the kind that felt rare, unguarded. They entered the penthouse, the city glittering behind the floor-to-ceiling windows, and for the first time since their fake engagement began, neither of them reached for distance. No sarcasm. No walls. No pretending. Just silence. And the awareness humming between them. Arya kicked off her heels with a dramatic sigh. Okay, I can't be elegant anymore today. I'm at maximum capacity. Adrian loosened his tie. Good. Elegance has always been overrated. She shot him a look. Says the man who owns cufflinks that cost more than my rent. He smirked, walked toward the kitchen, and pulled out a frozen pizza. Arya blinked. A billionaire eating frozen pizza. Should I take a picture? No, he said calmly, sliding the pizza into the oven. Because then I'd have to explain to the press why my fiancé is mocking my culinary choices. Her heart skipped at the word fiancé, even though it wasn't real. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But tonight, it felt different. They ended up sitting on the living room floor with the pizza box between them, leaning against the couch like two college kids avoiding responsibility. Adrian had ditched the last pieces of his tailored suit, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy. You know, Arya said, chewing thoughtfully, I expected your life to be a strict schedule of caviar and Michelin stars. And miss out on this? Adrian lifted his slice. Impossible. She laughed, really laughed, and his eyes brightened at the sound. It happened slowly. Accidentally. Naturally. One moment they were kidding about his terrible skills at cutting pizza. The next, they were talking about things neither had expected. I grew up thinking I had to be perfect, Adrian admitted quietly. Every detail, every decision, every breath, all watched. All judged. When you walked into that meeting today and challenged them without fear, he paused, searching for words. I envied you. Arya blinked, startled. Me? Adrian, I was terrified. But you didn't show it. His voice lowered. You were brave for both of us. She hesitated, then spoke softly. I always thought I was too small for rooms like that. Too ordinary. But today, I realized maybe I've been the one underestimating myself. Adrian set his slice down and looked at her. Arya, nothing about you has ever been ordinary. The sincerity in his voice hit her like a warm strike to the chest. She swallowed, trying not to let her heartbeat show on her face. You know, she murmured, when this started, I thought you were cold. He raised a brow. Only at the start? Okay, maybe still a little cold, she teased. But now? I know you're just guarded. And very, very stubborn. Adrian laughed softly, shaking his head. I should have known you wouldn't let my reputation scare you. It did, she whispered. But not enough to make me walk away. Something shifted at that. Something big. Something irreversible. Adrian leaned slightly closer, his voice low. Arya, today, watching you, I felt, he stopped, because anything he said next would matter. Would change things. Arya breathed slowly. Then say it. I'm not running. He looked at her for one long second, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Then he cupped her jaw gently with one hand. Not demanding. Not claiming. Just asking. Arya, he murmured, tell me to stop if this crosses the line. It already crossed, she whispered. And I'm still here. He kissed her. Soft at first, like he was terrified she might disappear. Then deeper, warmer, real, painfully real. Her hands clutched his shirt. His fingers slid into her hair. Every part of the world outside the penthouse vanished. No contract. No family pressure. No lies. Just two people who had spent weeks pretending. Finally unable to pretend anymore. When they broke apart, both breathless, Arya rested her forehead against his. So, that wasn't very fake fiancé of you. No, Adrian said, voice rough, that was just me. Wanting you. Her pulse thundered. And what does that mean, she whispered. That I'm done pretending, he said. If we're doing this, I want it to be real. Arya didn't answer with words. She kissed him again. This time, with all the truth she had been trying to ignore. The morning after their first real kiss felt strangely quiet. Not awkward. Not uncertain. Just quiet, like the world was pausing to acknowledge that something between them had permanently shifted. Arya woke before Adrian, watching the soft rise and fall of his chest, the relaxed expression that rarely appeared on his face. She brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead, and before she could second-guess herself, he opened his eyes. His voice was still rough with sleep. Good morning. She blushed. Morning. It was simple. Tender. Normal. Until Adrian's phone vibrated on the nightstand. He glanced at the caller ID and immediately tensed. My father. Aria's heart sank. Adrian answered. Yes? Richard Hale's voice was ice-filtered through steel. We're holding an emergency board session at 11. Montclair has stirred trouble. And your little marriage surprise has triggered a domino effect. You will bring your wife. And you will explain yourselves. The line went dead. Adrian threw the phone aside, jaw tightening. Arya touched his arm gently. We'll handle it. He looked at her, really looked, and something fierce flickered in his eyes. No. They will handle you through me. And I won't let that happen. The Hale Global Holdings executive boardroom was nothing short of intimidating, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, a marble table that could seat 30, and portraits of Hale ancestors lining the wall like silent judges. Arya had expected pressure. She hadn't expected this. Half a dozen powerful families had shown up, Montclair, Ainsworth, Crowell, each representing a strategic alliance the Hales had cultivated for decades. All of them angry that Adrian's marriage had disrupted the carefully arranged political landscape of high society business. As Adrian and Arya entered the room, whispers erupted. That's her? Impossible. She ruined everything. She doesn't belong here. Margaret Hale sat at the head of the table, posture immaculate. Richard stood beside her with arms crossed, expression unreadable. Chloe was the only one who offered Arya a discreet, encouraging nod. Adrian held Aria's hand openly, bold, defiant, and guided her to sit beside him. It didn't go unnoticed. Sebastian Montclair was the first to attack. You jeopardized multi-billion-dollar alliances, he growled. All because you were impulsive enough to marry a nobody. Adrian slammed his palm on the table, the sound echoing through the room. Finish that sentence. I dare you. Sebastian flinched but recovered with a sneer. We deserve an explanation. Richard's cold gaze shifted to his son. So? Explain. Adrian opened his mouth, but Arya stood up first. I will. The room fell silent, shocked, offended, intrigued. Arya continued, voice steady, you all assume I married Adrian to damage alliances. But the truth is, the alliances were flawed long before I arrived. Gasps. Murmurs. Outrage simmering like fire beneath ice. Margaret narrowed her eyes. And what exactly do you think you know, dear? Arya met her gaze unflinchingly. Enough to understand that you've all been building partnerships based on control, not compatibility. Transactions, not vision. Sebastian scoffed. How dare you? No, Arya cut him off. How dare you assume a woman can't bring value unless she comes from a dynasty? Richard's expression shifted, barely perceptible, but something had cracked. Arya opened the folder she had brought. Inside were detailed reports, charts, and revised projections she had prepared after the Montclair meeting. I reviewed the global expansions and interfamily contracts. There are redundancies in your strategies, conflicting investments, and zero cohesion. You're operating like medieval kingdoms vying for land. She slid papers across the table. This is a restructuring proposal that would stabilize your alliances without relying on forced marriages. Executives leaned forward, eyes narrowing in reluctant interest. Arya continued, in the Silver District project alone, you're losing $20 million annually by ignoring long-term sustainable planning. Montclair's projections are flawed. But with these adjustments, she tapped the documents, you'd gain those losses back in under 3 years. Silence. The kind that meant she had struck exactly where she needed to. Richard picked up one of the sheets, scanning it intensely. Margaret's lips tightened, not with disdain this time, but with something closer to grudging respect. One of the Ainsworth elders finally spoke. This is accurate. Another murmured, impressive. And she did this alone? Adrian smiled, pride gleaming in his eyes. She did. Sebastian Montclair glared but couldn't argue. Numbers don't lie. But this changes nothing. She still disrupts the system. Arya lifted her chin. Maybe the system needs to be disrupted. Richard set the papers down. For the first time in years, he said slowly, someone in this room has spoken with intelligence rather than ego. Arya blinked in shock. Margaret added, voice cold but less sharp, you have potential. Consider me surprised. Chloe's grin was proud, almost triumphant. But the victory was short-lived. A Hale security officer rushed in and whispered something urgent into Richard's ear. Richard's face paled. He straightened, voice thunderous with concern, Adrian. Arya. Someone just leaked your marriage certificate and the Montclair dispute to the media. Arya's blood ran cold. Adrian stood abruptly, fury flashing in his eyes. Who did it? But deep down, they both knew. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The chaos of the leaked marriage certificate spread faster than wildfire. By the end of the day, headlines were everywhere, Hale dynasty scandal, secret marriage revealed. Montclair alliance collapses, who is the woman behind it all? Adrian Hale's mysterious wife shakes the corporate empire. Arya read the notifications with a numb expression, her phone buzzing non-stop. Every article twisted the story differently, painting her as a social climber, a threat, a mistake. But Adrian stood firm. Every time another rumor appeared, he pulled her closer, an arm around her waist, a reassuring touch at her back, a soft word in her ear, let them talk. They don't get to define us. I'm right here. Still, the storm took its toll. When they finally returned to the penthouse that night, Arya felt drained, emotionally, mentally, physically. The weight of scrutiny pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. Adrian noticed instantly. Arya, he said gently, sit down. Let me get you some water. She shook her head. I'm fine. Just overwhelmed. He turned her toward him, his hands warm on her shoulders. You shouldn't have to handle this alone. Her voice cracked. But it's because of me. No, he cut her off softly. It's because of us. This is our story, not a scandal. Arya exhaled shakily. His steadiness grounded her in a way she never expected when this marriage began. She looked out at the night skyline, towering, glittering, endless. The world felt too big, too loud. But then Adrian took her hand. And the world quieted. Come with me, he said. Without explanation, he led her to the rooftop garden of the penthouse tower, a place she hadn't seen before. Lantern lights glowed softly across the pathways, and the city stretched beneath them like a sea of stars. The air was cool. Still. Peaceful. Arya sucked in a breath, feeling her pulse finally slow. This is beautiful. I thought you might need somewhere quiet, Adrian said. She looked at him, this impossibly composed man who had become her anchor. Why are you doing all of this? She whispered. You don't have to take care of me. He studied her for a long moment. Yes, he said softly. I do. Arya blinked. Why? He didn't answer, not with words. Instead, he released her hand, and took one slow step back. Her heart stumbled. Adrian? But he wasn't walking away. He was lowering himself. Down onto one knee. Arya froze. Her breath hitched. Her heart hammered. Tears pricked at her eyes before she could stop them. Adrian looked up at her with a vulnerability she had never seen on his face before. Not in the boardroom. Not during fights with his father. Not even in their most intimate moments. In his hand was a small velvet box. Not the simple band they had used for their agreement. Not something rushed. Not something to pretend with. A real ring. Brilliant, shimmering, chosen with intention. Chosen for her. Aria Collins, Adrian began, his voice steady but impossibly tender. When we first got married, it was out of desperation. Out of strategy. Out of necessity. Her throat tightened. But somewhere along the way, he continued, you became the woman I trust. The woman I admire. The woman I choose. Aria's breath trembled. Adrian, he opened the box. Inside was a ring that sparkled like the city beneath them, timeless, elegant, undeniably hers. I don't want our story to be born from a contract, he said. I want the second time we say, I do, to be for love. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Adrian's voice deepened, reverent and real. Arya, marry me again. This time, not for protection. Not for strategy. But because my life means nothing without you in it. Aria's hand flew to her mouth as a choked sound escaped her. He stood there, on one knee, offering her not just a ring, but his heart. Please, he whispered, say yes to the marriage that actually matters. Arya didn't speak. She couldn't. She fell to her knees in front of him, tears streaming freely, and threw her arms around him. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, Adrian. I'll marry you for real. He held her tightly, burying his face in her neck, breathing her in like she was the only truth he had ever known. When they finally pulled apart, he slipped the new ring onto her finger, their real ring. Not a symbol of an agreement. But a promise. Arya looked at him, glowing through her tears. I love you, she whispered. Adrian cupped her face, voice breaking. I love you more. And under the quiet city sky, they kissed again, not as partners in a contract, but as two souls who had finally chosen each other. The night Adrian proposed for the second time felt like a dream Arya didn't want to wake from. The ring on her finger glimmered with meaning, real meaning, every time she looked at it. For the first time since their impulsive courthouse marriage, she felt no fear, no uncertainty, no rushing heartbeat of someone pretending. This time, everything was exactly as it should be. And so, only 3 weeks later, they stood together on a private beach in California, the warm afternoon sun bathing the sand in gold, waves rolling gently like a soundtrack written just for them. Not hundreds of guests. Not a spectacle for the press. Not a political performance. Just the people who mattered, Chloe, smiling like she had orchestrated the universe herself. Aria's mother, dabbing tears with a lace handkerchief. Richard and Margaret Hale, surprisingly composed, almost proud. A handful of close friends and trusted co-workers. Arya stood barefoot in the sand, her dress soft and flowing, her hair curled by the ocean breeze. Adrian looked at her as if he had been holding his breath for years and only now remembered how to exhale. He took her hands gently. You walked into my life like a storm, he said, voice rich with emotion. But you stayed like a sunrise. Arya laughed softly through her tears. And you walked into mine like trouble. But now, I can't imagine peace without you. The officiant smiled at their exchange before continuing. When the vows were spoken, real and trembling and honest, I choose you, I trust you, I love you without condition, even the ocean seemed to hush in reverence. Their kiss was slow, deep, warm with the promise of every year ahead. This wasn't the marriage they signed for. This was the marriage they chose. The weeks following the wedding were a whirlwind, not chaotic, but full. Full of new routines, new dreams, new tenderness that felt fragile and powerful at the same time. Arya finally did something she had whispered to herself for years. She opened her own architectural studio. A small space at first, exposed brick, soft lights, plants everywhere, a view of the river. She named it Collins Atelier.